I never planned to see her again, not really. People like her belong to another chapter, the kind you close carefully and put back on the shelf. But that night, when she looked up and saw me standing in the doorway of her shop, it was as if the past exhaled quietly. Between us, she was my mom's best friend, Marianne. Everyone called her practical, the sort of woman who fixed things before they broke, who could carry a conversation and a room in the same breath. I remembered her from years ago, a smile too steady, hands always doing something, even when her eyes seemed somewhere else. Now she owned a small bookstore at the corner of Oak and Fifth, the Paper Lantern, the kind of place that smelled like dust and coffee grounds, where the floorboards sighed when you walked too fast. I stopped by to drop off a box of old novels my mother insisted belonged there. I told myself that was the only reason. The bell above the door chimed, thin and distant. She turned from behind the counter, hair pinned loosely, sleeves rolled up, a pencil tucked behind her ear. "Ethan," she said, blinking as if the name came from far away. "Yeah." I smiled too quickly. "Mom said to bring these by." Her gaze lingered a moment too long before she nodded, wiping her hands on her apron. "I didn't think I'd see you again. You've grown into," she trailed off, caught herself, and finished, "someone who still looks like your mother when you smile." I laughed softly, unsure what to do with my hands. The silence after stretched, not awkward, exactly, but fragile. The kind you don't want to touch. She moved closer to take the box, brushing my wrist lightly as she reached for it. That single touch, accidental, harmless, still managed to send a small, electric awareness crawling up my arm. "You can put them on the back counter," she said, "if you don't mind stepping over the chaos." The back of the shop looked like an organized storm. Stacks of unsorted books, old receipts, an empty mug with a tea bag still clinging to its edge. She followed me, talking about renovations and slow business, her voice steady but softer now, as if the words weren't really for me, but for herself. I listened more than I spoke. It wasn't what she said that held me. It was the rhythm of it, the easy self-assurance under the small talk. The way she moved, calm and certain, while her eyes occasionally betrayed something quieter, something like exhaustion, or maybe loneliness, carefully disguised. When I turned back from setting the box down, she was leaning against a shelf, watching me, not staring, just looking, like someone trying to place a memory. "You still play guitar?" she asked. That startled me. I hadn't touched one in years. "You remember that?" Her smile was faint. "You used to play in the yard when your mom and I sat outside." I always wondered what happened to that sound. I opened my mouth to answer, but nothing came. The air between us felt charged, like the hum before a storm. She seemed to sense it too, cleared her throat, straightened a stack of books that didn't need straightening. "Anyway," she said softly. "Tell your mom I said hello." I nodded, forcing a smile, but my eyes lingered on her hands. The way her fingers hesitated on the spines of the books, the small tremor she quickly masked. When I stepped out into the night, the air was cool, the street mostly empty. I should have just gone home. But halfway down the block, I caught myself glancing back through the window. She was still there, standing by the counter, touching the edge of the box I'd brought, as if she wasn't ready to move it yet. That image has stayed with me. Her in the warm glow of the shop, head slightly tilted, the faintest smile tugging at her lips. I don't know what changed that night. Maybe nothing. Maybe everything was already beginning. I told myself I was just stopping by to see if she needed help with the repairs. The shop's front door still stuck halfway when you pushed it, and I knew she'd mentioned it last time. That was the excuse I carried in my pocket, practiced like a line from a play I didn't want to admit I'd rehearse when I walked in. She was standing on a small ladder, reaching for a box on the top shelf. Her blouse was smudged with dust, her hair falling out of its pin. She didn't notice me at first. "You really shouldn't climb that alone," I said. She jumped a little, the box wobbling in her hands before she steadied it against her chest. "God, you scared me," she breathed, laughing it off but keeping her hand pressed to her heart for a second longer than necessary. "I just came to check the door," I offered quickly, feeling absurd for how rehearsed it sounded. "The door?" She arched a brow, amused. "I've been meaning to call someone. But you didn't have to. I was nearby." I lied, shrugging. She tilted her head. She didn't believe me. Not completely, but she let it go. Fine, she said, smiling faintly. If you're going to play handyman, at least let me get you some coffee. I fixed the door. Or pretended to. Mostly, I listened to the sounds of her moving around the back, the clink of cups, the hum of the small espresso machine. She hummed under her breath, something without melody, just quiet and human. When she brought the mugs out, she leaned against the counter, her sleeves rolled higher now. I noticed how tired her eyes looked when she smiled. Not in a way that made her seem older, just real. Like life had taken its time with her. Do you ever miss it? I asked before thinking. She blinked. Miss what? The way things were. Before all this. I gestured vaguely to the shop, to the half-sorted books and the half-finished life surrounding her. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she looked at the window, where the evening light was turning the glass to gold. Sometimes, she said softly. But I think what I miss most isn't a thing. It's a version of myself that used to feel certain. There was a pause, long enough for the air between us to thicken. She caught herself then, shaking her head lightly, as if brushing the thought away. You're too young to understand that kind of nostalgia. Maybe, I said. Or maybe I just notice when someone hides it well. That made her laugh, a small, surprised sound that filled the quiet. But there was something in her eyes when it faded, a flicker of awareness, maybe guilt, maybe something else. She looked down at her cup, turning it slowly between her palms. You shouldn't look at people like that, Ethan. Like what? Like you see things you shouldn't. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Just the faint ticking of the clock above the counter, the scent of burnt espresso, and her hand brushing against mine when she reached for the sugar. She didn't pull away immediately, and when she did, it was with a small inhale, quiet, careful, as if even that breath might give something away. That night, I couldn't stop replaying it. Not the touch, but the look that came after. The one that said she knew exactly what was happening between us and wished she didn't. The rain had started without warning, a steady, relentless downpour that blurred the windows of the shop until the outside world was only color and noise. I'd been helping Marianne catalog the new shipment, mostly just to have a reason to stay longer. The sound of rain on the glass gave everything a strange intimacy, as if the storm had quietly sealed us in together. She sat across from me on the floor, her legs folded, a stack of paperbacks balanced on her knees. Her reading glasses slipped down slightly as she squinted at the small print on a spine. You can go, you know, she said after a while, not looking up. You don't have to wait out the weather. I don't mind, I said. It's nice here. That made her glance at me. Quick, curious, almost shy. Nice, she repeated, a faint smile touching her lips. I'll take that. Lightning flickered through the window, and for a second, her face lit in the pale flash. Sharp lines softened, eyes reflective, the small silver ring on her hand catching the light. When the thunder rolled, she exhaled quietly, her shoulders easing as if she'd been holding something in. We worked in silence after that. Or tried to. Every small movement felt louder than it should have. The brush of paper, the soft tap of her pen against the ledger. I caught myself watching the way her hair curled slightly at her neck, the way she tucked it behind her ear whenever she was thinking. Then her phone buzzed. She glanced at it, and her expression changed. Not dramatically, just a tightening around her mouth. The sort of shift you only notice if you've been paying too much attention. Everything okay? I asked. She hesitated before answering. It's just, she stopped then sighed. My ex. He forgets the meaning of no contact. I didn't know what to say, so I didn't. I just waited, watching her set the phone face down beside her. She kept her eyes there, as if it might come alive again. I thought I was done feeling anything when his name shows up, she said, her voice lower now, more to herself than to me. Turns out, the body remembers before the mind does. The words sat between us, raw and human. I wanted to tell her something comforting, something wise, but nothing came that didn't sound foolish. Instead, I slid one of the books toward her, Letters to a Young Poet. You should read this one, I said. It's about learning to live with silence. Her eyes softened as she took it, fingers brushing mine. light, unintentional, but it sent that familiar, impossible spark through me again. Silence can be dangerous, she said after a moment, turning the book over. Sometimes it says more than words ever could. Outside, the storm deepened. The lights flickered once. She moved closer to the window to check, and when she turned back, we were only a few feet apart, closer than we'd ever been. Her breath caught slightly. So did mine. For a heartbeat, the world seemed to narrow to just that space. The faint smell of her perfume, the hum of rain, the way she looked at me as if weighing something she couldn't name. Then her phone buzzed again. The sound snapped the moment clean in half. She turned away quickly, voice steady but quieter now. You should probably get going before it gets worse out there. I nodded, though I didn't move right away. When I finally did, she didn't look up, just held the book against her chest, like something fragile she didn't want to drop. I left with the rain hitting my shoulders, half wishing I'd said something, half relieved I hadn't. But all night, I kept seeing that look she gave me, the one caught between wanting and knowing better. The next time I saw her, it wasn't planned. It rarely was anymore. I'd stopped pretending my visits had reasons. It was late, the kind of late when the streets are half asleep and the world feels smaller. The shop's front lights were still on, though the sign read closed. Through the window, I could see her sitting at the counter, surrounded by papers, an untouched cup of tea gone cold beside her. I knocked softly. She looked up, startled, then tiredly amused. Ethan, she said, unlocking the door. You have a talent for showing up when I'm least prepared to be seen. I could come back, I offered, though I didn't move. Her eyes softened. No. Come in. The air inside smelled like rain and old books. The silence between us felt heavier this time. Not uncomfortable, just aware. Like both of us had been carrying too much of something unspoken. She gestured toward the half-filled shelves. The new inventory arrived early. I was trying to get ahead, but her voice betrayed her. Too even, too practiced. I didn't answer. I just joined her, stacking books beside her until the small talk ran out, and all that was left was the quiet sound of paper brushing paper. After a while, she leaned against the counter, rubbing the back of her neck. You ever feel like your life became something you didn't choose, one slow decision at a time? I looked at her, really looked. The faint crease between her brows, the way her shoulders hunched just slightly, as if protecting herself from something invisible. Every day, I said. She gave a small laugh, but there wasn't much joy in it. You're too young to sound that certain. I'm not certain, I said. I'm just tired of pretending I don't know what I want. That caught her off guard. Her head lifted slowly, eyes searching mine. The silence that followed wasn't safe anymore. It buzzed with something sharp and fragile. Ethan, she said my name like a warning, but there was no distance in it. Only recognition. I know, I said quietly. I shouldn't be here this much. I shouldn't want to. Her breath hitched. This, whatever this is, it can't go anywhere. I'm not asking it to. Then what are we doing? Her voice cracked on the last word, and it undid me. She wasn't angry. She sounded lost, like she'd been holding the same question long before I came along. I stepped closer, not enough to cross the line, but close enough to see the reflection of myself in her eyes. I don't know, I said. But when I leave, the silence feels worse than this does. She closed her eyes for a moment, steadying herself. When she opened them, they were damp, but her expression was calm, heartbreakingly calm. You make me remember what it feels like to want something again, she whispered. And I don't know if that's a blessing or a mistake. Neither of us spoke after that. We just stood there, the clock ticking somewhere behind us, the rain starting again outside. She didn't ask me to stay. I didn't ask to. But when I finally turned to leave, her voice broke the quiet, soft, almost trembling. Please, don't come tomorrow. It had been almost a week since she told me not to come. I tried to listen. I really did. But that night, as I walked past the paper lantern, the lights were still on. A faint glow, one lamp near the counter. The kind of light that doesn't mean open, just not ready to be alone yet. I stood outside for a long time before pushing the door open. The bell chimed softly, a sound that felt almost guilty. She didn't look surprised, just tired. You're persistent, she said. I wasn't planning to stay, I murmured. I just saw the light. She gave a small, humorless laugh. That's what everyone says before they do. I didn't know what to say to that, so I didn't. Instead, I leaned against one of the shelves, pretending to look at a stack of poetry books. There was a long silence. Then she said quietly, "You remind me of someone." That made me look up. "Someone I used to know?" I asked. Her gaze stayed fixed on the mug she was holding. "Someone I used to love," she said. The words weren't dramatic. They came out like something she'd rehearsed alone too many times. I waited. She didn't continue right away. "He was younger," she said finally. "Not by much, but enough to make me question everything." It didn't last. I told myself it couldn't. He wanted too much, and I gave too little. That's how it always goes. I swallowed, my throat suddenly dry. "And you think I'll do the same?" Her eyes lifted to mine then, steady, almost kind. "No," she said softly. "You'll probably do worse. You'll make me remember what that felt like." The honesty in her voice didn't feel cruel. It felt like the truth no one says out loud because it's too heavy to carry in daylight. A phone buzzed on the counter, startling both of us. She ignored it, but the name lit up on the screen before fading. Liam. She noticed me seeing it and looked away. "My son," she said quickly, as if it explained everything. "He's 27. Lives out of state." It shouldn't have meant anything, but something in my chest shifted, sharp and disorienting. 27. Barely older than me. The math did something I wasn't ready for. It redrew the space between us, made the air heavier. "You didn't know?" she asked, noticing my silence. I shook my head. "No, you never mentioned him." She smiled faintly, but it didn't reach her eyes. I try not to talk about things I miss. For a while, neither of us said anything. The rain had stopped outside, leaving the glass streaked and shining. She turned the mug in her hands, staring at it like it held something she couldn't name. Finally, she looked at me again. Her voice was almost a whisper. "When you walk in, for a second, I forget how old I am. I forget what time has taken from me. That's not your fault. But it's not fair to you, either." I didn't move closer. I didn't speak. All I did was nod, because somehow, that honesty was more intimate than any touch could have been. When I left, she stayed sitting there, one hand over her mouth, the other still on her phone, as if caught between calling someone and erasing what she'd just said. And for the first time, I realized the story I thought I was walking into wasn't about wanting her. It was about what she made me remember about wanting it all. The days after that conversation felt quieter, slower, like the air between us had changed texture. Neither of us said anything about what she'd confessed, but every glance, every pause, carried the echo of it. When I finally returned to the shop, it was late again. The sun had gone down, and the world outside had that washed-out stillness that comes right before winter sets in. Through the window, I could see her closing up, her hands moving methodically, her expression unreadable. She looked up when I stepped in. For a second, I thought she might ask me to leave again. Instead, she just exhaled, long and soft. "You never listen," she said. "I try," I said. "But you leave the light on." That made her smile, not wide, but real. Maybe I forget to turn it off. We didn't talk much after that. I helped her stack the last of the books, sweeping the floor while she wiped down the counter. It felt ordinary, domestic, but underneath it, something fragile hummed, like a current we both pretended not to feel. When we were done, she sat down by the front window, pulling her cardigan tighter around her shoulders. I sat beside her, not too close, not far either. Outside, the streetlights buzzed faintly, catching the slow drift of falling leaves. For a while, we said nothing. Then she spoke, her voice almost too quiet to hear. "I keep thinking about what you said," she murmured. "About pretending not to know what you want." I turned to look at her, but she kept her gaze on the glass. And I'm tired of pretending too," she said. "But I don't know what comes after that." Her honesty wasn't sharp this time. It was tender, worn down by time and fear and longing. I shifted slightly, enough for my arm to brush against hers. She didn't move away. Her fingers, resting on her knee, twitched once, then stilled. "You don't have to know," I said. "You just have to stop running from it." She gave a small, shaky laugh. "You make it sound simple." "It's not," I said. "But it's real." She finally turned to face me, and for a long moment, we just looked at each other, all the words we hadn't said pooling in the quiet between us. Her eyes were wet, though she wasn't crying. I could see her fighting it, the instinct to retreat, to fix, to reason her way out. But then she sighed, leaned forward, and rested her forehead against mine. A gesture so small, so unassuming, it felt like the truest thing in the world. No kiss, no promise, just the sound of her breath mingling with mine, and the steady beat of the rain returning outside. When she finally spoke again, it was barely above a whisper. "Let's just stay here a while." So we did. And in that silence, that soft, trembling stillness, everything between us finally settled, not as something forbidden, but as something inevitable. Not perfect, not certain, just real. And that was enough. It's been months now. The bookstore still stands on the corner of Oak and Fifth, the same faint chime over the door, the same smell of dust and coffee, the same soft light spilling out into the street at dusk. But something's different. Maybe her, maybe me, maybe both. We don't talk about that night much. There was no declaration, no collapse into some impossible version of love. What happened was quieter, like two people who stopped pretending they didn't see the same truth reflected in each other. I still visit sometimes. Not as often. Enough to notice the new stack of poetry she keeps near the window, or the way her laugh sounds lighter now. She teases me about growing up, about how I finally stopped hovering by the door like I was afraid to enter a room that wasn't mine. She's still careful. She always will be. But the walls around her don't seem as high. And me? I've stopped mistaking intensity for meaning. What I learned from her, what we both learned, I think, is that love doesn't have to arrive like a storm to change you. Sometimes it's just a quiet shift, a soft undoing, a shared breath that reminds you you're still alive enough to feel. One evening, I found her sitting by the window, reading letters to a young poet. The same copy I once handed her months ago. She looked up and smiled, not surprised to see me. "Still looking for silence?" she asked. "Still finding it," I said. We didn't need to say more. I sat beside her, and we watched the streetlights flicker on one by one. She leaned back, her shoulder brushing mine. That was all. No need for anything louder. Maybe that's how real things end. Not with fireworks or final words, but with the kind of peace that settles inside you. When I think of her now, I don't think of the tension or the confusion or the weight of what we couldn't be. I think of the steadiness she taught me, that love can exist in moments, in glances, in choices that lead you closer to yourself, even if they pull you away from someone else. People always imagine stories like ours end in heartbreak. Maybe they do, if you measure endings by what's left behind. But if you measure them by what they wake up in you, by the courage to feel, to risk, to be seen, then maybe this one ended exactly as it should. Before I left that night, she reached out, just a small touch on my sleeve. "You'll do good things," she said. "You already are." I didn't know how to answer, so I just nodded. But that moment, her voice, that quiet certainty, has followed me ever since. Maybe love isn't about who you end up with. Maybe it's about who you become because of them. And if this story made you feel something, let me know in the comments. Would you want more stories like this?